You know, one of the greatest blessings in my life, I think, when I look back on things, is that God has always put the right people in my path to give me something that I wasn't expecting. These incredible mentors that gave me these lessons, and these lessons forever just changed me. Little things that they gave me. And I'm going to give you a story. I used to be a pharmaceutical rep. I used to work for a couple of big companies, and one of the doctors that I called on with my last company, I was a big time doctor. I call him, he's Dr. G. I was just going to call him Dr. G. And, we'd go to his office, and he was one of the few doctors that would actually take time, and if he had, I don't know why, but he just kind of took a liking to me. So he'd take time and talk to me and say, how are you? Other doctors would have no time, but he would always take a moment just to say what's up and that kind of thing. And one day, he had a little slot because his patients canceled. So I was sitting in the waiting room waiting to get his time prescribed. And he said, come on back, and we went back to his office. He sat down there. He said, so son, how are you? How's your family? This whole thing. And I said, things are good. He's like, how's the job? I said, oh, things are good. He's like, you look tired. I said, well, I had a lot of paperwork last night. He's like, yeah, it's going to get you. I said, the paperwork? He's like, nah, you'll see what I mean. And so we were talking. He's like, look, eventually it becomes a grind. Eventually the sizzle starts to wear off, and then you have to get at the work of it. And he's like, the work is the work. It's just not supposed to be pretty, it's just the work. And so we keep on talking. So that was the first lesson that I got from him, that eventually it's going to just be work. The work is work, and you have to be okay with the work. That was the very first lesson. Here's the second lesson I got from him. And there's 3 lessons total. The last 2 really blew me away. He said to me, well, let me ask you a question. He said, where'd you get that tie? I looked down, I was like, Macy's. Yeah, it was a Macy's tie. He said, let me see it. I was like, okay. So I take my tie off and I give it to him. And he's holding it in his hand. He's like, nice tie. I was like, thanks. He's like, if I told you, I will pay whatever price you want, sell me that tie, would you do it? I said, yeah. He's like, okay, go ahead. I want to buy your tie. How much? Pay whatever you want. I said, $50. He's like, $50? Huh? Okay. I said, 100. He's like, 100? He just wasn't talking. So now I'm thinking, I'm like, what's he doing? I'm like, I want $1,000 for this tie. He's like, you want $1,000 for this tie? I said, yeah, I want $1,000 for this tie. He's like, I want $10,000. He's like, I just told you I will pay you whatever price you want for this tie, and you want $10,000? So now I'm like, I want $100,000 for that tie. He's like, wow, the youth. I just told you I'll pay whatever price you want, and you want $100,000? That's all you want? I want $1 million for that tie. He kept saying the same thing over. I got to $1 million. I got to 10 million, 20 million, 50 million. I got to 100 million. I got to $1 billion. I said $1 billion. I want $1 billion for that tie. He's like, okay, got it. He's like, let me ask you a question. You're at $1 billion now, right? I said, yeah. He said, where'd you start? I said, $50. He's like, if someone says they'll pay whatever price, why would you start at $50? I was like, well, I paid $40 for the tie. He's like, I didn't ask what you paid. I asked, what would you charge? Are you getting it? He said, son, this is like life. If you only think it's worth that, then it is. But if you think that it's worth that, then it is. He's like, you were thinking about what you paid. You weren't thinking about what I was willing to pay. Man, let me tell you something. When I tell you I got slapped and blessed all at the same time, I got slapped and blessed all at the same time. I was blown. I said, I probably look, if I could go back and look at me, I'd probably say it like this. Because I never heard anything like that before. I just never heard anything like that before. He said, the greatest challenge for asking and getting is your belief system. You didn't believe I would pay a bigger number, so you never asked for a bigger number. And he's like, I see all these people come through here, and I see people, and like they have so little because they ask so little. And they get exactly what they're asking for. But if they ask for more, they'd actually get that. It was the first, like, tangible, I got it moment about ask and it shall be given unto you. Like, it's really simple. I'll never give you more than you want. And that's how life works. Life ain't giving you more than you want. So you got to figure out how much you really want and then go get that number. That was lesson number 1. That was lesson number 2. And lesson number 2 messed me up. But then came lesson number 3. Because we're between patients, I was there for about 30 minutes. And I'm realizing as I'm looking at his shelves that he had all these books on philosophy, and it wasn't like I was thinking I'm in a doctor's office, but it wasn't just medical journals. It was so diverse about travel, and I realized as I'm kind of glancing around because I never paid attention that this is a person who thinks outside the box. But here's what he said. He said this to me, and he said, this tie, how much would you charge now? I said, I want $100 billion. He's like, okay, go ahead. Write up a contract. Sell it to me. So I looked around his office because I'm thinking, is he like crazy and wealthy? You know what I mean? So I want to sell this tie so I'm writing on a piece of office paper, I want to sell this tie for $100 billion. And he's like, okay, give it to me. And I was like, yeah. And so I signed it. He's like, so if I sign this, you can sell me that tie, right? I was like, yeah, and I want my money, man. He starts laughing. I said, okay, all right, good. He's like, good, you got the lesson. I'm not buying this tie for $100 billion. I said, all right. So we start laughing. He said, now let's say I want your job. I said, you want to go from being a doctor to a pharmaceutical rep? He's like, yeah, I want to try being a rep for a while. And I want to work for your company. Sell me your job. I said, you want me to sell you my job? Yeah, and I'll pay whatever price you want. Now I'm hip to the game, right? So you can't pull that on me twice, man. It's not working. So I said, oh yeah, no problem. You can have my job. He's like, yeah, how much? I said, well, I want $10 trillion for my job. Now I'm feeling all swagnificent. I'm like, I want $10 trillion for my job. He's like, that's a lot of money. I was like, well, hey, if the tie was worth $100 billion, the job's worth at least $10 trillion. He starts laughing again. He's like, okay, I got it. He's like, okay, go ahead, sell me your job. I said, okay. He's like, here's some more paper. I said, okay. And I start writing on the paper. And I said, I will sell you my job, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, okay, let me see the paper. And this time he signs it. And I'm like, okay, he didn't sign for the tie, but he signed. Okay. He's like, go ahead, take it. Congratulations, I now have your job. And I was like, okay. So I'm sitting there like, what the heck is going on? He's like, hey, quick question. Can you sell me your job? I said, well, no, I can't actually sell you my job. He's like, why? And he's like, go ahead, say it with me. Say it with me. He's like, go ahead, come on, say it with me. Say it with me. I don't own it. He's like, good. So now, I've been triple slapped. He's like, James, how can you sell a thing you don't own? I was like, He said, so every day, he's like, it's hot right now, right? I'm like, yeah. You have a suit and tie on, right? I said, yeah. He's like, are you hot? I said, yeah. But you got to keep the suit and tie to impress me, the doctor, to sign and prescribe your medicine, right? I was like, yeah. So you're going to walk around with this tie in this heat for the thing you don't own? He's like, James, this thing in my hand you own. That company you work for, you have a position you don't own. Because you don't own it, you can't sell it. Therefore, it's not an asset. This tie has more net worth value to you than the job that you're in my office sweating about. Let me tell you something, man. I was done. He's like, here's what I'm going to encourage you to do, young man. He's like, you're motivated. I can tell you're a hard worker. He's like, you need to figure out how to own something that's an asset. Because for most people, the clothes they wear are a greater asset than the income they make. Let me tell you something. I got out of that office traumatized, and blessed, but one of those, oh my God moments. Oh my God, like what did I just hear? So when I started working my business, it all came together. That conversation, those 3 lessons, just it all came together. And so I'm going to say this to you. What would you have been thinking if you'd have sat in that office? What lesson would you have learned? Would it have motivated you, or would you have tried to argue against it? Because when the man is holding my tie up in front of my face and saying that this thing has more value than the job I go to every day, because at least I own this. If you don't realize how confronting that was, but I couldn't argue with what the man was saying. So the question is, what would you have done? What lesson would you have learned? I know the lesson I learned, but now that you've heard what was said, what will you take from it? Will you really listen to what was said?
If you actually took time to learn about how incredible you were, nothing would ever stop you. See, the definition of sight is the faculty or power of seeing.